Hello and welcome to this run through for my talk entitled "And Then Nothing Turned Itself Inside Out," which is also what's next for games, which is what's next for blockchain games. And this is going to be given to the Blockchain Manchester evening event on Tuesday, 14th of March. Okay. So I'm John Jordan. Who am I? Yes, that's me. So I've been in the game space for over 20 years, done a whole bunch of stuff. Currently, I'm blockchain game specialist at Hero Capital, London-based VC. I do game consulting for a bunch of blockchain games companies. I do some stuff on YouTube and podcast, Blockchain Gaming World, and previously was a co-founder at Steel Media, company behind Pocket Gamer, and launched blockchaingamer.biz as well. Okay. So let's start off by looking back at the last 50 years of the game sector. This is looking actually at the revenue of that sector. So lots going on in this. We just need to look at the colours really. So if you look at sort of dark blue, we see the arcade sector. So obviously where the games industry sort of kicked off in the early 70s with sort of Pong going into sort of Space Invaders and Pac-Man. So pretty solid for the first sort of 10 years. Maybe 20 years, basically goes away to nothing as we are in sort of 2023. On top of that, sort of lighter blue, we have PC. So that's pretty steady sort of growth. Obviously, open platform, lots of innovation happening there with MMORPGs and Minecraft, all that sort of stuff. And currently estimated probably about $40 billion worth of revenue. So the second biggest sort of sector in and of itself. At the bottom, we have console in sort of teal. Tends to go up and down quite a lot for the first few decades. Starts to sort of become more sustainable when PlayStation and Xbox are released in sort of the early 2000s. And about $35 billion maybe now. So console and PC sort of roughly the same you could think of. At the top we have in grey, we have handheld. So never very big. Again, goes up and down a bit as we have sort of Game Boy and DS, 3DS, PSP, but obviously totally sort of annihilated by the big red wedge there, which is mobile. So mobile actually really starts only 10 years ago in terms of generating revenue. That's when free-to-play mobile comes in. And now mobile is by far and away the biggest sector. So, bigger than PC and console combined. The whole industry now is about sort of $200 billion, give or take. Sort of depends on exactly how you measure these things. But mobile is the majority of that. And obviously the important thing for mobile is that it is all free to play. So basically these are games where you can play pretty much all the game for free. And a few people, maybe less than 1% of people actually spend any money at all. And a few percentage of that 1% spend a lot of money to sort of get these very high sort of rare goods or be able to sort of speed through things much quicker than everyone else. PC and console does have free to play, but much less of a proportion there. So the other interesting thing is that sort of in terms of sort of size, PC console probably about 500 million players, give or take. Mobile probably between $3 and $4 billion. And actually where the growth happens in terms of numbers of people is obviously when you start giving away stuff for free on a platform that everyone has. So that's the mobile is going to be measured in billions. PC and console probably not. Most maybe 1 billion at some point. So that's what's happened over the last 50 years. So let's sort of take that information and sort of try and do something a bit more useful with it. Maybe look at my great Photoshop skills at least. So here we have obviously time on the horizontal axis, and we have sort of an idea of sort of the cost of playing a game and how much sort of game time there is as well. So these are very rough numbers, as you'll see. I think we can draw some trends from it. So starting off with the arcade game, so we have Pac-Man there. If you were terrible at Pac-Man like me, it might cost you like $100 to play an hour of Pac-Man. You're just feeding those coins in all the time because you're dying all the time. As soon as we have sort of home consoles coming in, whatever they are, obviously you've got to buy the console, so that's a big upfront cost. You've got to buy the game, another sort of upfront cost. But then once you're sort of playing these games, even these very simple sort of early games in the 1980s and 90s, suddenly the cost of like an hour's worth of playing a game drops considerably, maybe 2 orders of magnitude. We can think of that. But the games themselves are not sort of super complicated. And while you can sort of play them over and over again to sort of chase high scores or find Easter eggs, they're not really designed to be played sort of forever. That changes actually 1997. This is Ultra Online, Lord British. So this is the first, or at least one of the first, sort of first big scale MMORPG where you are effectively, the game never ends. As much time as you can give the game, you will not be bored. There's always stuff going on there, and obviously that has a massive impact as well on the sort of this idea of sort of cost per hour. Wasn't cheap. $70 for the game to buy, and then $10 a month per subscription for that. But you could basically play for 24 hours a day, I suppose, if you didn't need to sleep. And that's really that's not really changed since then. Not all games at that sort of level, but basically all games can sort of be played, or the majority of games now, big games, can be played forever. There's sort of the endless sort of amount of content. So something like Minecraft comes in, obviously a little bit different as a game, sort of more user-generated content, but that makes it even sort of cheaper. So you're just paying the upfront cost of the game. There's no subscription in there, and you can merrily sort of just spend as much time in Minecraft as you want. Obviously, in all these examples, people can spend more than this, but this is sort of a rough idea of sort of what's going on. And then we sort of end up with the rise of sort of free-to-play mobile over the last decade. And something like Fortnite, available on all platforms, played by hundreds of millions of people, and vast majority of those people spend no money at all, and they can play that game for as long as they want. There's always sort of stuff happening in there. You never get bored. There's always challenges. So that's sort of over the last sort of 40 years, I suppose. That's where we've gone. So basically, loads of people playing now, and basically no one spending any money, or a very small number. But there's still $20 billion, $200 billion, because enough of these people are spending quite large sums of money. So where can we go from there? Can't go any cheaper than zero, can you? Well, no, of course not. So this is where blockchain comes in. So we've now taken our vertical scale, and we've gone cost time negative. In that we are now the idea, at least the concept behind blockchain games, is you can earn money in the game. This is pretty interesting. We had lots of examples of this, so hundreds of games in development. Have we had anything that's really sort of stuck? We have not yet, but we've had sort of examples of things that sort of we could see how they might stick. So Axie Infinity obviously came in 2021, was its big sort of uptick. That's been around since 2018. Quite hard to know where to put Axie Infinity on this graph. Obviously, some people, at least for a couple of weeks, if they got in early enough in August 2021, made a ton of money playing the game, at least for a couple of weeks. Other people sort of came in a bit later and spent a ton of money, didn't play it very much, and didn't make any money either. So it's a bit hard to know. Obviously, it's sort of a first generation sort of product in that sense. We'll sort of see where we're going on that. Have some ideas. But I think the sort of the problem that we had in the sector, which wasn't just to do with sort of Axie, but more generally, the blockchain game space had sort of forgotten that people like to play games if they're for free, and that's sort of how people expect to play games now. And we were in this sort of situation where we were charging people quite large sums of money to buy assets in games that hadn't been made yet. So the worst example is Pixelmon. So this was this game where it was a 3 ETH mint for these characters. Character is there on the left. So it was $8,000 at the time. People didn't know they were getting these characters, but this is what turned up in people's wallets, and obviously a massive outcry. And they have since tried to sort of say, well, the artwork, we will change the artwork and make it all nice again, which is clearly, the fact that what an NFT looks like is irrelevant to the price, as we will discuss. So this was, I think, the high point, the low point, however you want to see it, and it became very clear to people that just trying to sell stuff for games that didn't exist yet, or even try and sell stuff for games that sort of maybe do exist, is not really where the market is going to be sustainable. So to go back to our little graph here, we'll just park Axie up in the air somewhere. Not quite sure where they're going to sort of turn out there. Obviously, it's now much more looking like it's going to be free to play. We'll see how they get it through app stores or not. But what we've got now is this sort of more sort of nuanced idea here. So I've got this little character, this little anime character, and there I've sort of put her below the line. So there's a potential that you might be able to earn some sort of some value by playing some of these blockchain games. But they're basically, the majority of them are going to be free to play. I think that's sort of where we have ended up in terms of best practice, and that's where game developers who you think about blockchain are sort of realizing, free to play is sort of where you are in the space, and if you want to be having lots of people playing your game, you want to be mass market, and then you have to be free to play and work out how you can sort of build value out from that. So Digitaigaku, I won't go into a lot of detail on this, but again, it was sort of probably the prime example of giving away something for free. So this is their characters. There's only about 2,000 of them. There's like a free PFP NFT mint in August 2022. Current value is, this is the floor price, 7.2 ETH, so $12,500. There's a whole bunch of other stuff going on around here that NFTs are being created using these NFTs and this idea of an NFT factory. But I won't go into that. And the game's not really been released yet. We don't know quite what's going on with the game. But this is the idea that you give away stuff for free and you sort of build community around that. And there's an idea that sort of value may accrue to some of these assets. Some of the assets in Digidagaku are much cheaper, clearly, but some of them are much more expensive. And I think that's on the right ballpark. So what does Andrew Bailey, the bank chairman, governor of the Bank of England, have to say about these things? Well, he's often waffling on about cryptocurrency, which he doesn't like. But in this case, I sort of broadly agree with what he's trying to say here. Obviously, he's worried about consumer protection, and he's saying about cryptocurrencies have no intrinsic value. It doesn't mean to say people don't put value on them, because they can have extrinsic value, but they have no intrinsic value, which is exactly what you'd expect a sort of a central banker to say. But broadly, I think we are saying at the moment, in most cases, that a lot of these assets have value because people say they have value. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, I would say that, wouldn't I? But I think with games, the goal here is we can actually give them intrinsic value as well as extrinsic value. So let's have a statement here. Crypto is made up money that people value. So I think that's what sort of Andrew Bailey is saying. It's sort of made up money. And some people think it's super valuable. And I guess you would say with something like Bitcoin, enough people have said it has value for enough sort of a period of time that probably it does have some value, whether it's worth $27,000 or $63,000 or $1,000. I mean, that's sort of up to the market. But you can sort of see over time, communities and time does allow you to actually start to say some of these things I think do have some form of intrinsic value. So we can think about games, we think about people playing games for long periods of time. Games are made up experiences that people value. Definitely the case. We see this as these games become longer and longer, and these games go on forever, effectively. And people have, friendships, relationships, very long sort of time spent playing these games and build up all the things very broadly that they would do in real life. In fact, sometimes, for a lot of people, obviously, it's sort of easier to have those experiences in games rather than in real life. So we can sort of think it's not a massive jump here for sort of games, crypto assets, for blockchain assets, for NFTs. They are made up money, made up, and they are circulating in made up experiences, and people value the experiences. And we can sort of not think it's a massive jump for, if people are valuing these experiences, then the assets they have in these experiences that are made up, that are also made up, can actually over time sort of accrue value to that. Quite how that happens, we will wait and see. But I think the best practice is now that this stuff has to come bottom up from people playing these experiences, and they will sort of work out the value of these things. As soon as developers start saying this NFT is worth $100, $1,000, $8,000, or even 20p, that's probably the wrong way to do it. And a really good example just sort of happened this week. So this is Maple Story, a really well-known MMORPG out of South Korea, at least very well-known in Asia. So it's been going for 20 years, has 180 million registered users across various different sort of games over time, sort of PC, mobile, console. And they've just announced their first blockchain sort of initiative here. So it's called Maple Story Universe. There's two games. There's Maple Story N and Maple Story N Mobile. So those are sort of side-scrolling 2D MMORPGs, as Maple Story was. Also now announcing an SDK for developers to sort of be able to build within that universe, and also sort of a mod user-generated content sort of aspect as well. So yeah, sort of games and sort of the tools around games to create a ecosystem. So this is pretty big news, pretty big project, and they did a big video about explaining this. So I've taken some stills from that. This guy here is their blockchain games lead. So certainly a year ago, I think people would be going to Nexon, where you can make a ton of money by selling these characters in NFT drops, and what's your mint price going to be, and all this sort of stuff. And they've been very clear, and I think they are in the vanguard of this sort of best practice stuff, which other developers are looking at as well. So no pre-sales, not doing that, and no cash shop in the game either. So they're not selling items before the game, they're not selling items in the game. So players will create their own free market economy. This is what we expect to see. In fact, the NFTs and the tokens, as far as we understand it at this early stage, will be sort of found, created, discovered, and collected through gameplay. So you play the game, your earning these NFTs, you're creating these tokens. There'll be a marketplace for people to sell them. We don't quite know how that's sort of going to work in terms of rarities and why you would want to buy some and how you would use them to level them up, all that sort of stuff. But basically, people are going to be playing this game with IP that they already know and in many cases love. And they're going to be selling this sort of stuff, and all the economic activity will be carried out by gamers. And Nexon will just take some sort of fraction, some sort of a fee, transactional fee based on that. So we come to this sort of situation where, when it comes to the value part is sort of created by time of people playing the games. We know people play games for enormous amounts of time and for many years. They get more skillful in those. Some people are just more skillful than others. And obviously, everyone learns skill as they play through these experiences. And that's what the value is being created by. And the value is being created by, is being sort of defined by the players who are saying these things are valuable because I know it took time to create these, and it's going to be useful for me in sort of progression in the game, all that sort of stuff. So I think that's definitely where we sort of end up in terms of how games from the bottom up are creating this sort of value proposition, which is extrinsic, as is sort of currently the case, which is basically communities making up value. But I think over time it becomes intrinsic as well. We have these sort of economies where real money is feeding into them as well. And I think that's where we end up. So thanks for listening. And there are my details.